by a few people why we don't do theme parks. Which is a good question because none of our videos have been of theme parks and how we experience them. Well, for a start, I have to say that I'm a bit of a wimp when it comes to theme parks. I'm the person that other people take along to hold the bags and coats because I don't like big thrill rides, but I do like to see other people enjoying themselves. And John and George like theme park rides, and I just like to see them enjoy themselves. So we went to Walt Disney World, didn't we, in 2014 in your home state of Florida?
We did, yes. And we had a really good time.
And in the United States, they have something called the ADA, which is Americans with Disabilities Act, is it?
It is, yes.
Yes. And that meant that pretty much John and George could go on whatever they wanted to go on, which was really good. So John wanted to go on the Tower of Terror at Hollywood Studios. George and I didn't want to go, and that was absolutely fine as long as we took John to the start of the ride. That was absolutely fine. He could go on it by himself. There was no arguments there. And you went on all sorts of rides together, didn't you and George, that I was just too wimpy to go on. Splash Mountain, yes, we've got the photo here where it actually looks like John didn't want to be on there and George is trying to pull his hands away from his face.
And really, it was more just trying to avoid being wet, which in itself is silly because it's called Splash Mountain. You know what you're going to get.
Yeah, but there was no issues with you going on there.
No.
So when we got to 2015, we don't live too far away from Alton Towers. So it would be more than feasible to have an annual pass, and we would have made good use of it. Now, obviously, we realise that this isn't the United States of America, so the laws here are going to be different. There's no ADA, for example, so the laws are different. So before we purchased the annual tickets, I just wanted to make sure that if there was a ride that John and George wanted to go on, that it would be okay if they went on it without me. And I was assured that that was absolutely fine. If there was a ride they wanted to go on and I didn't want to go on, they would be able to go on it without me, which was fantastic. So on that basis, we got our annual tickets, and I think we had an adult one for you, a child's one for George, and I had a carer's annual pass. And we went along. There were some rides I would go on. For example, I went on Hex and I went on Jewel. You look at me, big and brave.
Well, I mean, you were in a haunted house. You can't get more brave than that.
Wow. John and George went on the Runaway Mine Train, which we've got the photo here. And you went on the log flume together as well, didn't you?
We did, yes. And I don't remember the name of that.
Well, I think that was just the log flume. And he went on Marauder's Mayhem, which is kind of Alton Towers' version of a spinning teacups ride, but it's got spinning barrels instead to kind of fit in with this pirate theme. So it's the same principle.
It's
but
the
it's
exact same vehicle, just with different things.
It's just a barrel instead of a teacup. Oh, I don't like rides that spin, because they make me feel really, really dizzy for hours afterwards, and it doesn't leave me in a good way. So I avoid spinning rides. So John and George went on Marauder's Mayhem, and we have a photo of them here. And we did a few more things, didn't we?
We did, yeah.
Yeah. And
it was a really nice day.
It was up to that point. And then George wanted to go on the Marauders Mayhem again, the the teacup ride. So we went back to it, and there was a different operator operating it this time. So we went in, and I got John and George seated in the barrel, and then I walked away, and the operator came up to me and said, "I thought you were riding with them." And I said, "No, I don't do spinny rides." And she said, "Well, they can't ride them." And I said, "But they were able to ride on here before. What's changed?" And she said, "Oh no, they can't ride now. Knowing my luck, I'll get into trouble." So I had to walk back and get John and George out of the ride, the spinny barrel, and then we had to walk back to the entrance. And there was a queue of people waiting to get on the ride, and they all saw what happened, and we could hear murmurs in the queue of, "Oh, that's a shame, fancy kicking them off," and it was quite upsetting and quite humiliating. And the first thing we did then was we went back to the kind of customer relations place.
Guest relations.
Guest relations. And we made a complaint. And the first thing that they did was they offered us a free meal. That seems to be a standard Alton Towers thing. If something happens that you're not happy with, they offer you a free meal, which obviously we declined because a free meal was no way going to make up for the humiliation that we had just been put through. So we left, and at this point I was feeling quite upset, and George was in tears because he thought he'd done something wrong when he hadn't. And this started a whole process of back and forth between us and Alton Towers for quite some months.
I think this went on for, 3-4 months maybe?
It went on for quite a while. And Alton Towers kept repeatedly telling me that it was a health and safety matter that they'd been kicked off the ride, and sending me all this information about health and safety regulations and rules for rides that operate above ground level. And it didn't matter that I kept repeatedly telling them that this is a ride that operates purely at ground level. So how were their policies relating to rides operating above ground level relevant to this ride, the Marauders Mayhem, because it purely operates at ground level? They just kept coming back. It was a health and safety reason, and so on. And then they said to us that because we got a carer's annual pass, that we should have got another carer's annual pass because there's 2 disabled people in the party, and we should take somebody with us so that we could go on all the rides, which would mean we've got no family in the UK. We're in a position that I imagine that quite a few parents of disabled children are in, where you find out who your friends really are when you have a disabled child. So that wasn't an option either. So the only option available to us, if we wanted to get a second carer's card, was to pay somebody to come out and spend the day with us.
And that takes away from the whole family aspect of going and having a good time together.
Exactly. And I said to them, well, why should we as a family of 3 have to pay somebody to come with us so that we can have a family day out? How is that fair? They didn't have an answer for that one at all. So we had a lot of back and forth, and at one point we were actually told that we shouldn't have been allowed on any rides at all, even the ones that I went on with them, because it should be 1 carer per disabled person. So the rides that we were allowed on, and that I was brave enough to go on, as a family of 3, we shouldn't have been allowed on at all, because they said they got this policy of 1 carer per disabled person. So had we known that was a policy, we wouldn't have even bothered with the annual tickets, because it just wouldn't work for us.
No, it would have been one of those things. Okay, we're frustrated, but at least we know, so it's not a
Yeah.
massive inconvenience.
And they also had no response when we said, but they've been allowed on the runaway mine train and the log flume, just the two of them together, and they both operate at height. But they're not allowed to go on a ride that operates purely at ground level that they were previously allowed to go on. And they said, yes, that's right, it's a health and safety issue.
I don't think they fully listened to what you said, really.
No, I don't think they were listening either. They just kept repeating it's health and safety, health and safety. And we didn't really start to get anywhere until I quoted the relevant bits of the Equality Act 2010 to them that they'd actually breached in what they'd done, how they'd humiliated us. And I also pointed out that I didn't think the ride operator saying, knowing my luck, I will get into trouble, was a valid health and safety reason. And at this point, Alton Towers gave me a call and they refunded the money from the annual passes.
That was a long phone call. I think we were on the phone with them for almost an hour.
Yes. So we did eventually get the money for the annual passes refunded. But George, who previously quite liked going to Alton Towers because he liked the rides, he said that he didn't care if he never went to Alton Towers again. It completely put it off, the whole experience had. And we're also not bothered if we go again or not, because it really put us off as well. And it's kind of carried through, so we haven't been to a theme park since the Alton Towers experience in 2015. And as things are right now, we've no plans to, have we?
No, which is a shame because some theme parks can be a lot of fun.
It can be fun. I mean, even though, as I freely admit I'm a wimp, I do like to see people that I love and care about enjoying themselves, and there are some rides that I will go on. But we just haven't bothered since. So that kind of answers that question as to why we don't do theme parks. It's because of that bad experience we had at Alton Towers.
It's a mixture of the bad experience and, at least here, as far as I know, most of the theme parks are owned by the same company, so we would have the same problem.
Well, possibly. But I think the issue was because one operator allowed you on the ride and then another operator wouldn't let you on the same ride, and then you were allowed on rides that operated at height, and we were allowed to go on things together, which apparently we shouldn't have been. It just seemed to be whether you went on a ride or not depended on the ride operator on a particular ride at a particular time of day.
I mean, really,
there's no rhyme or reason to it at all.
There is a reason, and the reason is lack of consistent training, it seems.
Well, that's
no good reason, you could say.
That's as it was in 2015. We don't know what it's like now because we haven't been back since, and we absolutely have no plans to go back. But that's where we are. So we just thought we'd share this anyway. So for those people who are wondering why we don't do days out at theme parks, now you know. So we hope you found it useful and it provided you with that explanation. So thanks for joining us. I hope you found the video useful in answering the question as to why we don't go to theme parks. If you liked the video and found it informative, then we would really appreciate it if you hit the thumbs up button. And if you'd like to know when other videos come out, please hit the subscribe button just to let you know videos are out at 9 AM every Friday morning in UK time. So thanks for joining us again anyway, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye now.